Modern sales organizations do three things to be successful. They recruit good people and they train those people. They put in place good processes for those people to work. And lastly, they put in technology to make sure that can scale. But how do you become successful? How do you drive adoption and engagement? Today I'm joined by Jason Thomas from Accenture to talk about this. Jason, introduce yourself.
Thanks, David. My name's Jason Thomas. I'm a senior manager and Salesforce technology architect with Accenture, working in the cloud-first area in Switzerland. My background has been working with gamification with a couple of different clients and talking about the business benefit of driving different behaviors within the solution set.
So it's interesting there that you've talked about behavior and motivation. Surely if we put some technology in place, we just ask people to use it. We just give them some discipline and say, you must use this system. Why does that not work? What's the difference between motivation and discipline?
It's a good point. I mean, you have discipline all across the sales process, for example, with putting required steps into the technology. But what a lot of people don't understand is the benefit it gives to the business. And that's the big difference. When we talk about discipline and required fields for data quality, for example, one of the challenges is you want to require a lot of different fields to make sure that every line of the business has the data they need. But we all know sales reps are busy. They're going to type in a new contact from their mobile phone, for example, and you want to actually put a limited required fields in there to get people to use the system. However, downstream, marketing wants to know more about this contact, for example, more about this account, so they can do their segmentation. So the difference between motivation is giving them the real reason that this benefits the business and understanding why.
So that suggests to me that there's a difference then, that motivation is about making me feel that it's important for me to do it. Or more importantly, when you talked about marketing, it's important for me to do it because it's going to benefit someone else in the process.
That's exactly right. And you understand that by providing different fields for marketing, for example, helping them do better segmentation, that's going to generate better leads for you as a salesperson, for example, and better value to the business.
So when we then talk about CRM and we talk about adoption, it suggests that there's two different things here. Adoption is about making sure I use the system in the way that you set out to use, that I follow the process. The engagement is creating an emotional attachment. That means when I do something, it may be to help someone else do their job, but in turn, that helps me do my job. So that's a very different model to what salespeople have been used to.
Exactly, because normally when you're a salesperson, you're thinking of you. You're thinking about your number, your target, your goal. And when you talk about that engagement and that motivational factor of getting me to add more data, for example, or to notify people or keep them informed, that's when you realize that downstream, your actions at the moment will benefit other people in the business, which then in turn will come back and help you.
We talked a lot there about behavior and behavioral insight, but you also mentioned gamification, and that's quite a scary term. Let's just take a step back from business and share your thoughts on gamification. Why don't give us some examples of where it impacts our everyday life, and then we can go on and talk about gamification in business.
Absolutely. In the everyday life, gamification has been a super useful tool to incent people to continue the usage, to do certain things, drive different behaviors. Certainly in the gaming industry, you know, it's all about if I play a little bit more and I get more points, I get a new level, and a new level gets me new things in the video games. But it also is useful in everyday life. I use it constantly in Strava, where I'm competing with people when I'm doing my cycling and activities to measure how I'm going. I certainly use it for TripAdvisor as a frequent traveler. I contribute reviews and I get rewards for those. So it's touch points in everyday life, your frequent flyer miles and your levels, you know, your hotel points, all that. It's something we're used to, and we expect some value intrinsically or non-intrinsically from leveling up.
So if we start to apply this into a business environment, how do we take a short or a long-term view? Do we run gamification every day, day in, day out? Share some of your thoughts on that.
I think gamification works well. It's not a discipline or a strategy as far as, you know, a methodology in the sales cycle, but instead it should be a shorter. I think 2 to 6 weeks is kind of the range that I see that it brings value. A perfect example with a customer I was working with, or a case study I read, was, you know, they found that the lead generation team on Monday morning wasn't making many calls. You know, they're just getting in from the weekend, checking their emails, you know, kind of figuring out what they're going to do, drinking the coffee to get them going. But instead, we want to get those calls in first thing Monday morning to get in the minds of the people's business for the rest of the week when they're starting their week. So running a short competition just on Monday mornings for a month to see how many more calls you get going, how many people you get engaged in their business cycle right away at the beginning of the week was actually very effective to generate leads.
So gamification is a way of dialing up performance, a way of diagnosing where there's some areas of the business you need to improve, like you talked about data quality, identify a team that needs to do more, and then use the games to dial up performance and get people to improve better. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's absolutely that. And you identify, the behaviors that you want to generate more activity in or influence a certain group of people that you can target. But it's also about the competition as well is a big factor of that. Certainly in certain cultures, in America and Australia, for example, salespeople are very competitive. They want to see who's ahead of them in the leaderboard. And that helps you identify the top performers. If someone's always coming out ahead, they're doing good sales, and they're always winning the competitions, I want to talk to them. What are you doing? What are you doing differently than me? And it also helps you identify people maybe that are the laggards that you want to help influence their behavior to help them be more successful.
We get this idea then that we need to improve the performance of the business. We need to change some behaviors. So I'm going to set up some competitions. What sort of risks do I have? What are the things I need to be mindful of?
I think some of the risks that you have are making it too complex, making a game, a modeling of the game that people just don't understand. B, I think you also can run it too long. If you run it too long, then people lose the excitement and the energy about this. So those short, sharp competitions, I think, are quite useful. C, I think the running the games, you need to have the regular communication when you're doing gamification. That people at the first part know that it's being launched, that they understand the value of this, not just value in that I might win a reward, but also the value to the business, and that you have executive sponsorship on this or sponsorship from the business owner. And then regular communication along the way keeps the energy going into the game, whether that's through chatter, dashboard, updates, and so forth, to keep people moving. So I think some of the risks then to back that up are people don't understand why the game's being played or the contests are going. They don't understand the rules, what the motivational behaviors you're trying to change are. And then, you set it once and then no communication going along the way.
So I want to go back to the example you gave about Strava. So you're out riding your bike and you're going on a race and there's 5 hills in that race and you've set yourselves up and you start to pace yourself with the first hill and the second hill, and you're using Strava to do that. It's acting as a real-time coach for you. And you get to the end of the race and sure enough, you set out to be in the top 10 and you were 8th in the race and it was great. But let's just talk a little bit more about the data that Strava is catching. What else do you do with it? What do you do the day after the race and the day after the race? How do you take that data and start to understand what you're doing and become better?
One of the things I love about Strava is it just doesn't give you your total time. It gives you little segments along the way in these short, sharp pieces, whether it's a hill or whether it's a flat part. And then not only does it show you your past performances, and if you get a little badge because that was your second best time or third best time, you can also compare it to other people, not just in overall in the world, but also with your group and your friends. So I use it as a little bit of a competition nudging with my buddies who to say, actually, I beat you on this leg. So it's a motivation factor at the end to help me push harder, which was kind of the whole point of tracking your performance.
So the picture you're painting there is, whilst the badges that you're getting are motivating you there and then, actually the real value is the data when you go back to the data, when you start to analyze the data.
Absolutely. And I can look at different legs and segments and see how I'm going. For example, I'll look back and see, I'm actually fatiguing, 2 hours into my ride. And it's like, okay, well, let me maybe change some of my nutrition. Maybe I need to have, a little energy bar along the way or things like that. And I can really monitor my past performance to see how I'm going. You can also make changes to your bike or any other type of things and then monitor your performance as well based on what your different tires that you're using or things like that as well.
So a lot of what we talked about sounds like gamification is used real time for the running of the business. But what other tips have you got? What other aspects of a business can you use it for?
I think something that's maybe a little surprise on how to use gamification is doing this for onboarding, to getting new people to using the system. You might send them in training and they might go through a day-long course and then they get a nice Word document or a manual out of that. So the benefits also to me are like when you use Sumo, when you're in context, and that is the big key. You don't have to remember that I'm supposed to do these things. In context, while I'm editing an opportunity, while I'm editing contact, I get those little suggestions, little nudges. And you can turn those on and run a competition just for new joiners. And that reminds them that, oh yes, I'm also supposed to update these fields, for example, or I'm supposed to set the stage to a different level, or whatever the activities you want to promote are doing. So you can do this with new joiners to kind of give them a training and incentive tool to help them learn to use the different pieces of Salesforce.
So clearly when you're using Strava on your bike, there is great value in the data as you are riding, as you're going up that hill. But actually what you're suggesting is you take that data when you get back and you analyze that data and you start to make changes on your behavior for the next race and the next race. So let's now think of that inside a business context. How do we start to apply gamification in that way and start to use that underlying data in a business?
Well, in the long-term benefits of this is you have a lot of data. And one of the great things I really like about Sumo and CloudApps is you can run contests silently. Because one of the challenges that you have is to understand your baseline. So by running a competition silently for 6 weeks and then turning the contest on, you now have learned what the difference is, and that's your ROI. And that's a great way that you can prove the value of your contest, but also looking back at that, you know what to tweak, what was working and what wasn't. And if you can start to move those groups of people that maybe aren't following the process correctly or aren't getting the value out of Salesforce, and you can start moving those along by doing these motivations and doing this behavioral changes, then you can obviously drive better performance in your business.
The performance rise comes from making your core performers more and more like top performers, and it's the motivation, the nudges along the way that keeps people on track. You have a CRM project running. How do you decide which areas of that project to apply gamification to?
So David, that's a really good question to figure out where to start running gamification on. Typically, we interview the business and say, what areas of the business are you struggling with? And that could be adoption, that could be data quality. So for example, running on data quality, often you have a few required fields, but you don't have all the fields that you want. Maybe marketing needs some additional information to be able to do better segmentation. So by identifying a group of an area of the system and targeting a game just on that, data quality can help. You can see the results very quickly and be able to measure those. And I think that's an important bit. By running the contest silently first, getting your baseline, and then running the contest live, you can actually see the benefit and measure the ROI. And that's one of the mysteries when you add on pieces to a CRM is what's my ROI? You can say it's a little better, it's a lot better, it didn't make an impact. But now with the strategy of being able to run the contest silently, run them live, you can actually see a physical guarantee of your ROI that you're getting from the business, and that can help you justify the value of running gamification in your business.
So if we go back to some of those data quality examples you gave us, they're very different measures. Traditionally, when you're running a sales team, your KPIs would be deals closed, value of pipeline coverage. If those traditional KPIs are more lagging KPIs, recording things after they've happened, what you're suggesting here is you need more leading indicators, telling you about things that are happening in real time.
Absolutely, and some examples I've seen are like, we know that if people schedule their meetings ahead of time with the business, for example, that they actually have better results. And being able to do things like that with Sumo is possible because it's a very flexible engine. It's not just the standard, did they enter this field in? We can actually build queries in that are a bit more complex. Have they entered in their appointments more than 7 days ahead of time? And be able to reward people who do that. And that's driving a behavior in the business that we know makes an impact because the good salespeople are doing that. And then you can actually measure that and incent them to do.